those stories. Let's start with the day's market action. The last street slipped for the second week in a row as recession fears and hawkish stances by major central banks continue to weigh on the sentiment. Both sensex and nifty dropped over 1% each over the week, tracking weak global cues. Friday's session contributed to this loss, with sensex and nifty dropping over 0.5% each. Remember, they had fallen nearly 1% each on Thursday. CNBC-TV18's Prashant Nair brings you the market wrap. Over to you.
For the second straight session, the market under pressure, and we left off at the low point of the day, almost at the low point of the day, like what we saw on Thursday. Banks were under pressure once again. PSU banks, which had been the darling for the street for weeks on end, they gave up gains aggressively, and that sort of saw through pretty significantly in the bank nifty. Mid-cap, small-caps, broader markets came under pressure. Market breadth as a result was negative. Nifty cuts coming through in names like Asian Paints, Dr. Reddy's. TCS was down sharply. IT index down 1.5% once again. Bajaj Auto, State Bank, Grasim and Apollo Hospitals were some of the cuts. Nothing very large. It's just that there were only 3-4 out of Nifty 50 stocks which were higher. So what was down massively. It's just that very few gainers that we had. Broader losses, broader markets, as I said, -2:1, almost declines outnumbering advances. GMM Fodler came under selling pressure, news flow there. Yes Bank was down after a decent run-up. PNB, IOB, Maharashtra Bank, Union Bank, South Indian Bank, Central Bank, lots of these names which had seen massive run-ups came under pressure. DMart, GICRE were some of the others which lost. Gains coming through, a bunch of fertilizer names, lots of sugar names like Ugar Sugar, Dwarikesh, etc. rallied. There was Raymond, which was higher, and a stock like Nava did well on the back of news flow. We had the company with us earlier on the program as well. I think, global price action is starting to matter once again after a long time. So in that sense, what happens in the US tonight, there is one of the largest options expiry in the US on Friday. Post that, will things settle down a little bit more as we head into the fag end of this year? I think that's the one to watch out for. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Prashant, for that. Moving on, India's monthly merchandise trades deficit has narrowed to a 6-month low of $23.81 billion as exports recover. However, the recovery is marginal and goods exports remain at 11-month lows due to lower prices and volumes. Lata Venkatesh is here with the details. Lata, what's your reading of these numbers?
Trade deficit coming down to $23 billion is very important. It's the lowest since 6 months, as you said. The exports have gone up to 31.9 and nearly $32 billion. And that, as you can see, is much higher, about $2.5 billion higher than October. And of course, higher than year-ago levels. But let's not run away with it. Even at 31.99, it is the lowest since November 2021. So we have to catch up. We are still struggling with lower prices and volumes because of recession in destination countries, but better than October. The goods imports also have come down in November. That's also helping a lower trade deficit. Imports have come down to 55.88 billion compared to 56.69 billion. And no, it is not because of crude. Other imports have gone down, which is very good. So that's why the November trade deficit will come up for you, 23.8 billion compared to almost 27 billion in the previous month, and just a little worse than the year-ago levels. The important part is that the deficit is the lowest in 6 months. Mind you, we are all worrying about current account deficit, so this number is welcome. We must not look at goods in isolation. You have to look at goods and services because India is a big software services exporter. So we look at goods and services. The exports are at 52 billion, a tad lower than what it was in October and what it was a year ago. So that may sound a bit discouraging, but the important part is goods and services imports has fallen drastically. From about 73 billion in October, it's down to 65.5 billion in November. So that has also helped narrow the trade deficit.
Right, thank you, Lata, for that. Moving on, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has asked India Inc. to brace for nations putting up tariff walls as they gear up to transit into a greener future. Speaking at a FICCI event in New Delhi, the finance minister said that these walls could result in higher costs for the domestic industry. She also said that a suspected long-drawn recession in Europe is an opportunity for industry to work out their strategies.
They want to fund their transition by raising tariff walls. when you're going to export your steel, you will be facing tariff walls in the name of climate action tax. This is going to affect us, both for meeting our nationally determined commitments and also for industry to quickly understand this necessity for resetting yourselves so that the tariff walls which are coming up newly in the name of climate change is something which we should face. Suspected long-drawn recession, which is likely to affect Europe, is not just going to affect your exports. It gives us an opportunity for many of the investments which are there for now looking for a different place from where their activities can continue to happen. It is also the best time for you to work out strategies for drawing those manufacturers from there to India. Even as their headquarters there, it might be useful for them to think of sourcing many things from here and producing from here.
Moving on, the upcoming budget is likely to have cervical cancer vaccine to be included under the government's immunization program. Timsy is there to take us through the proposal shared by Health Ministry and when is the vaccine likely to be ready for use. Timsy, over to you.
Well, that's right. Sources have told CNBC-TV18 that the Finance Ministry is likely to accept Health Ministry's budget demand to include cervical cancer vaccine in government's immunization program in the upcoming budget. Health Ministry, in a communication to Finance, has actually pitched that the HPV vaccine to prevent cervical cancer should now be made a part of the national immunization program, as the country now has an affordable indigenous vaccine. Health Ministry's view is that the indigenous vaccine is safe and can be administered to girls of age between 9 years to 14 years. And once included and budgeted for, government can procure the vaccine at a concessional rate and make it as part of a better health planning for women in the country. Remember, recently drug controller had cleared and approved Cervivac, a preventive cervical cancer quadrivalent vaccine developed by Serum Institute. Cervivac offers protection against 4 strains of HPV, that is HPV 16, 18, 6 and 11. And government expects that Cervivac can be made available from March or April onwards. So let's see whether this demand actually is accepted in the budget or not.
All right, Timsy, please stay on with us. Let's also talk about another important piece of news which is related to Maiden Pharma. Now, the Drug Controller General has written to World Health Organization saying that linking Indian-made cough syrups to the death of children in Gambia was a premature conclusion that adversely impacted the image of India's pharmaceutical products. Now, yesterday, the government said that cough syrups manufactured by Maiden Pharma that allegedly led to the death of 66 children in Gambia was of standard quality. Timsy, could you please take us through the highlights of this letter, because this is very important. It comes in the wake of those deaths in Gambia.
Well, on 13 December, Drug Controller V.G. Somani has written to WHO stating that the statement issued by WHO way back in October was unfortunately amplified by global media. In a 3-page letter, Somani has shared that Indian government has got independent tests done for the 4 cough syrups which were under question by WHO for alleged deaths in Gambia. Somani has shared with the WHO that the test results of samples clearly show that diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol were not found in the samples. Thus, and I quote, "There is no direct causal relationship between cough syrup consumption and deaths of children in Gambia." WHO's premature conclusion was unfortunately amplified by global media for building a wrong narrative against India's pharmaceutical products. India has been committed to rigorous monitoring and oversight to ensure the highest standards of manufacture in quality control of drugs and cosmetics. End of quote. Now, to talk on this further, we are now joined by Professor Y.K. Gupta, Vice Chairperson of Standing National Committee on Medicines, who was also made the chair of the expert committee to investigate the allegations raised by WHO, alleging Maiden Pharma manufactured cough syrups leading to deaths in Gambia. A very warm welcome, sir. So let me begin by asking you, where are we on the investigations? Now that the Drug Controller General has written to WHO sharing the test results, which show that the cough syrups were not carrying any DEG and EG, what do you have to say? Where are we exactly?
Thank you very much for flagging this issue. So I will just quickly brief you on the entire issue as follows. There was a communication from WHO to DCGI that the samples, 23 samples, 19 samples were collected from different places of cough syrup. And then they said that their testing laboratory of WHO found that there is an impurity of unacceptable limit of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol. Number two, it is known that these two products, ethylene glycol and diethylene glycol, are known to be nephrotoxic to the extent that they can be fatal. However, the alert was issued by DG WHO on the same day that there has been, if these impurities were found, which could be possibility of relating this to the possible death of 60 children. Now, this has created a furor, and then the media all started writing that 60 deaths or X number of deaths in children were because of diethylene glycol and ethylene glycol in these samples of cough syrup which were made by Medin Pharma in India. The issue was, a committee, government made a committee, and our committee repeatedly asked CDSCO, DCGI to get the following information from WHO, so as we can arrive at the causality assessment. Number one, the samples which out of 19 samples, 4 were found to have these two impurities, and they were made, as later mentioned, they were made from Medin Pharma. What about the results of the remaining 19? That's number one question. Number two question was that these medicines, cough syrups, were given to those subjects which were said to have been suffering from E. coli infection. And the working hypothesis which WHO mentioned is the E. coli infection and confounded by this syrup. It does not say that E. coli can also cause death in extreme cases, particularly when the body's immunity is low and children are malnourished. Number three, that these samples, the control samples, we were asking that what would be, how these drugs were given, what was the dose given, what was the duration, and what was the hospitalization condition. However, we could not get these information. In absence of these information, it is impossible to arrive at a conclusively what is called as a cause and effect relationship, causality assessment. WHO later informed that the causality assessment, WHO does not do the causality assessment, and it is to be done by the Health Authority of Gambia. We did not get information yet. And therefore, and later, recently, we got the information of the test report of the control samples of these 4 preparations and the ingredients, that is ethylene glycol and the propylene glycol samples, which was in that. And what was report says, all the 4 samples of the cough syrup control samples, the test reports say that they comply with the pharmacopoeia description. That means all the ingredients were within that. And that is why the remark was they meet the standard, they were of standard quality. We specifically looked for the concentration or the presence of ethylene glycol and diethylene glycol. Both were mentioned as not detected.
Sir, as you said that all the 4 controlled samples were found of standard quality. Don't you think it is now the responsibility of WHO to issue a clear instruction that the products manufactured by Maiden Pharma are safe so that the company can find its feet back? And similarly, it will clear the image of Indian-made pharma products globally as well, because post that, the image of Indian pharma products was hit badly. And not to forget, as you rightly said, the test results are very clear. WHO was unable to actually come back to the questions raised by your panel and DCGI. So the onus now lies on WHO. Why is Indian government not asking WHO to come back?
I agree with you, and I will add to that not only the samples were found to be of standard quality, but there is no presence of DG and DEG in these samples as estimated reported in the report. Secondly, we also went into the detail asking them what is the level of sensitivity, what is called as a detection level, LOD, and also we looked for the certificate of analysis. We also went to the extent of looking for from what was the source of propylene glycol, and we traced that source, and we also looked for the letter of analysis. So now, to conclude that, it is very difficult to say that this is not present in this. Now, we asked from WHO also through the CDSO that why not to get those samples which were shown to have presence, and then it can be redone. Now, and therefore, it is a mystery. I would not say what to be done, but it is the mystery that what was reported, was that correct? So, but the analysis report of these 4 samples and the ingredients, propylene glycol, there does not seem to be the causative factor of this. There are several other issues that we need to get it before we do the causality assessment. And that is something which is very important.
Sir?
And yes, please.
So what is the conclusion that you have given in your expert committee's view, sir? My last question, because you are also supposed to close the committee's terms of reference with a concluding report.
This has finalized the report, I would say, except some more information which is required. We are still waiting for information of a clinical information scenario so as to do the causality assessment. As far as the absence of these toxic adulterant or toxic substances presence, the report from the government laboratory in India does not indicate, and therefore conclusively that this could not be the cause of death. Cough syrup intake cannot be the cause of death in these cases. However, we have recommending that we need to strengthen the system for different reasons. That is, and also I would just say here, we also like to mention that the company, the industry, Maiden industry, was immediately stopped, was asked to stop the production. But that was mainly, purely for violation of GMP norms. There are several GMP norms, and also as an abundant precaution, they were stopped.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Y.K. Gupta, for weighing in on this important piece of news. And thank you, Timsy, for sharing with us the details of this letter. Moving on. India's popular tourist state Goa has received its first ever Greenfield International Airport. Prime Minister Modi had inaugurated the first phase of this new terminal that is bigger, livelier and more advanced. CNBC-TV18's Madiha Mujawar gets us a sneak peek from inside the new airport.
you're seeing behind me is Goa's new international airport. This is the second airport in this tiny state, the first one being the Dabolim Airport. This terminal is located in Mopa, which is in North Goa, and is about 35 kilometers from the capital city, Panjim. The new airport offers many more facilities to passengers which are not available at the old airport. The new terminal spreads across 68,000 square meters with a capacity to handle 12,000 passengers per day. It will cater to 44 lakh passengers per year in the first phase with an ultimate capacity to handle 3.3 crore passengers per year. Built by the GMR Group, this international airport serves all the segments of inbound and outbound tourism.
The existing airport being a naval airport, on the infrastructure of the naval airport, the Airports Authority of India airport is just working in collaboration with them. There are constraints in terms of the infrastructure. Hence, it was felt very clearly a need for a larger airport which is capable of expanding. This second airport is going to connect to more cities.
The airport has 18 check-in counters, 12 immigration and 8 emigration counters. Once you're inside the Mopa airport, departing passengers will move to the counters behind me for baggage check-in. The airport has also created self-check-in kiosks for faster processing. Post this, passengers will move to the first floor for security checking and then proceed for their boarding. The boarding area has a seating capacity to accommodate 800 passengers. After your security checking, when you proceed to your gate, the airport has created a long shopping line that stretches towards the gate. It has 70 outlets with 50 different local and international brands. Named after the late Chief Minister of Goa, Manohar Parrikar, the Mopa airport has 25,000 metric tons of temperature-controlled cargo handling capacity. Indigo and Go First are the first two airlines that have announced flights to the new airport. So if you're traveling to Goa after the 5th of January, your flight could possibly land at this new airport. With cameraman Swapnil Bandekar, Madiha Mujawar in Goa.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV18.